All right, welcome everyone to our Chamber of Commerce debates for the legislature. This is kind of an exciting day for a lot of people. I know that there's a lot of stress in the room and a lot of anxiousness, and I appreciate that. But we appreciate you being here. This is going to be an event that I think will give voters an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. And what I wanted to do was something a little bit different than the normal debates. What we wanted to do is make it as close to a Lincoln Douglas as we could. This is a little bit off-center of a true Lincoln Douglas, but what we did is send out questions to all of the candidates and ask them to ask a question of their candidate. All of them responded with great questions. We vetted the questions and decided that there was no reason to alter the questions or to return back to the candidates at all. They're great questions. I thought they were fantastic, actually, and we look forward to hearing the debate. What we wanted to do is make sure that the candidates are able to actually have a true debate, and so that was our purpose. That was our goal in accomplishing that, and we really appreciate the candidates' response. We do need to point out that none of the candidates' questions were shared other than with our immediate committee. So Rosa and Ashton and I saw the questions. No one else did, and so the opponent of the candidate will hear the question for the first time with the rest of you in this debate. We would like to welcome you to our Chamber of Commerce debate today. We appreciate you being here. We want to thank you for all the work that you do as legislators, as elected officials, as business people. We live in a great community, and we are so thankful and appreciative to all of you for all that you do. We would like to point out that this is being live streamed, and we want to express our appreciation to WIO4 News and Dylan Dorr for the work that he does. He does a fantastic job, and we're grateful to him and to WIO4 News for broadcasting this. We also want to express our appreciation to Western Wyoming Community College for providing the facilities for us, and also Eric Ham, who does a great job. Just this week, he was able to get this room live wired so that we can broadcast this event. We would like to point out a very important message that if any of you feel it necessary, the restrooms are right outside the door and to the right, and easy to find. Just a quick rundown of the rules. We will hear from both candidates, each given the opportunity to ask a question, to address the question, to rebut the question, and then a point of order. And we will explain that as you'll catch on as it goes along. The determination of who goes first will be done by a coin toss. And we have here a Sweetwater County coin, commemorative coin, and one side is an antelope and one side is an industry. And we went down the list for each of the candidates, and if your name came before your opponents in alphabetical order, then you'll be the antelope. So there's no calling, there's no deferring. You will be given a choice if you win the coin toss of either to speak first or to ask the first question. Those are your only two options, and you can't defer. So the advantage of speaking, of asking the question first, of having your opponent ask the question, introduce themselves first, is that you would get the last word at the closing statements. Does that make sense? Okay. We will go on then with that and let you know that the most important thing is just to have fun and to get information out to your constituents, and to let us know why you are the best choice to represent the state of Wyoming, Sweetwater County, and me. So good luck to all of you, and have fun. Right now, it's my very distinct pleasure to introduce a friend of mine. I've known Deb for a long time. We've worked together, and we've known each other for some time. She is an incredible asset to our community. We're thankful for her. Our moderator this afternoon is Deb Sutton, the marketing director at Memorial Hospital, Sweetwater County. And for more than 35 years, Deb has worked as an editor of different Wyoming community newspapers, reporting on a wide range of government agencies and political organizations, and she is wicked smart. She has moderated a number of community forums and debates over the years. She's judged debates for speech and debate, and she's taught me a lot of things in life. So please welcome Deb Sutton.
Thanks, Rick. That's too kind. That doesn't mean that I won't mess up, so expect that. And just to give all of the candidates just a little hedge, in your opening statements, personally, I think in your statement, we'd like for you to tell us what you think we should know about you. And I'd like to know why you're running for this office. Those are two things that I think the community would like to know about you as a candidate. You can deviate from that, it just doesn't matter, it's your opening statement. But there you have it. Enjoy and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Deb. Just a reminder, it may sound loud in here when you're talking, but it's important that you hold the microphone close like you're going to eat it, because for the sound to go out on the live stream, it's important to be particularly loud in here, right? So again, we thank our media for being here, Dave and Trina, and I think there's some others. But thank you for being here. Thank you all for attending today. Pay attention and please show respect, and let's have a good time. Right now, we want to invite Clark and Misty to come on down, and we will get you set up.
And thank you, everybody. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on, and all of you for taking time out of your day to be here. My name is Clark Stith. I'm running for re-election to House District 48, which encompasses sort of the east part of Rock Springs up through Century Park, north of Rock Springs, and sweeps down through the President's neighborhood. I'm running for House District 48 because I want to protect your Second Amendment rights, your parental rights, and to do what we can to spur economic development here in Sweetwater County. So on Second Amendment rights, I have an A rating from the National Rifle Association, and the NRA has endorsed me in this race. I was a co-sponsor of the Stand Your Ground legislation in 2018, and in 2022 I voted for the Second Amendment Protection Act. On parental rights, this last session I was a sponsor of a parental rights bill that would require the courts to ensure that when the government acts to take away a parent's liberty interest or to infringe upon a parent's liberty interest in raising their child, that the government do so with the only upon a showing of a compelling state need, and also do so in the least restrictive manner. Well, what does that mean in English? That means that schools, for example, should be telling you what's going on with your children, that parents should have the right to know what's going on with their children at school. So that's a bill that we got through the House, didn't make it to the Senate, but I intend to bring back if re-elected. On economic growth, let me say this: the government should not be in the business of directly creating jobs. That's not what we want. We don't want just lots of government employees. In fact, in the state budget, we worked to cut the number of state employees by over 300 as part of our 10% general fund budget reduction this last session. What the government can do, and should do, however, is where there is a market failure, the government can create the conditions for economic growth. Sort of like growing a garden. You can't make the tomatoes grow, but you can provide the right soil, the right fertilizer. What does that mean in practice? Well, for our district, for Old Rock Springs and North Rock Springs, what it means is flood control is one of those things that the private sector is very unlikely to deal with. We've actually had some pretty significant flooding here in the community, 2015, 16, and 2021. Causes a lot of property damage. So that's why I've been working with one of our flood control projects. You see it down behind Albertsons. That's the kind of thing. So I'm asking for your vote on November 8th because it's about follow through. We've gotten a lot done, but there's a lot more to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clark. Misty, opening comment goes to you.
Well, hello. I am Misty Morse. I'm also running for House District 48. I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. I've lived in Wyoming for the last 45 years. I raised my children here. My children continue to live here as they go to college in Laramie. I am a former co-owner of Elk Bomb Shooting Supplies. At Elk Bomb, we worked hand in hand with the community. We did numerous fundraisers to help people of the community. I spent 10 years working at Simplot Phosphates. I was a foster parent to over 25 amazing foster kids, and I would like to continue to serve our community in Cheyenne.
Thank you. The first question then is from Misty. a Libertarian, Misty Morris, running for House District 48. Her question to Representative Clark Stith, a Republican, is, with the COVID lockdown and overturning of Roe v. Wade, do you believe that there is a limit to individuals' ability to make their own medical decisions? If so, where is that limit?
Thank you. I really appreciate the question. That's a great question. It goes to the heart of our liberty interests in our society. Here's what I think is going to happen with Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it turns back to the states to decide questions of abortion. The House and Senate passed House Bill 92, which would severely limit abortion in the state. As you all know, that's been now put on hold through an injunction by the 9th District Court up in Teton County that will go to the Wyoming Supreme Court. And frankly, it's my prediction that the Wyoming Supreme Court will rely upon the Wyoming constitutional provision that allows people to make their own healthcare decisions. It's my prediction, I think, that the Wyoming Supreme Court will find some right to abortion in the Wyoming Constitution. So on the COVID issue, same thing. None of us liked, and I think I was not supportive of any mask mandate. I don't think anyone should be required to wear a mask. If people want to wear masks, they can. Thank you.
Okay, to you, Misty.
On the overturn of Roe versus Wade, I don't believe it's the government's business. It's between a woman and her doctor. And for now, the Wyoming Supreme Court has already decided that for us. And I agree with my opponent on the COVID issue. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't, don't. If you would like to get a vaccine, get a vaccine.
Thank you. Clark, would there be a rebuttal?
I think that fairly well says it.
Okay, Misty, a rebuttal? No? Okay, we will go on. Clark Stith, Representative Clark Stith, House District 48. His question to Misty Morris, the Libertarian, is, the Libertarian Party favors the legalization of street drugs. Is that your position? If not, please explain.
Oh, great question. We actually favor the legalization of medical cannabis, and I believe, once again, it's a person's choice to do what they wish with their body. So, yes, I do support the legalization of cannabis in Wyoming.
Okay, it's over to you, Clark.
Thank you very much. I think we do need some reform of our marijuana laws. So, for example, right now, on your third offense of marijuana possession, it's actually a felony. By contrast, for DUI, you have to have 4 DUIs before that becomes a felony. So that seems to be a disconnect. I would certainly want to change that. We may need to look at how gummy bears are regulated. I'm not in favor of recreational use for marijuana. If we had a very narrowly tailored medical exception, that would be something I would want to look at. But what I am concerned about is that the THC content in marijuana today is very different than it has been in the past. And generally speaking, I think the government does have some interest in ensuring that substance abuse is under control.
Thank you. Misty, a rebuttal?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, let me ask this then, from both of you, starting with Clark. Define a street drug. That was in the question that you had asked.
Sure. In my understanding, street drugs would include marijuana, heroin, cocaine, all of those things for which there's, at least under federal law, currently no legitimate use.
Okay, and in his original question, he said the Libertarian Party favors the legalization of street drugs. Is that your position? If so, please explain.
We favor the legalization of marijuana. We want to make sure cannabis, marijuana, not any of the harsher drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. Clark, back to you. Anything?
No, thank you. I think my opponent, certainly, I'm just glad to hear sort of what the position is and glad to have this debate.
Okay, you have the last word, Misty. Anything to add?
I think I've made it clear where we stand. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you both. We appreciate it. This was Representative Clark Stith, a Republican, and his opponent, Misty Morris, a Libertarian, both running for House District 48. Thank you both very much. Oh, closing arguments, I forgot. Closing arguments. Clark.
Great, thank you. I really care about this community. I've raised my family here. My fiance Lisa, my stepson Jax, they've provided, it's a great life here. I've raised my other 2 children here as well. There's so many opportunities here. I want to preserve the quality of life that we have here. And I think that I really appreciate the voters of Sweetwater County being able to give me the opportunity. I've really enjoyed it, and certainly would be an honor and a privilege to go back. And I hope that we can get things done that take care of our entire community. So thank you all very much. I appreciate that, and please feel free to call me if you have any questions, or if you hear me say something that you think is really stupid, please let me know, okay? My cell phone is 389-7735. Thank you very much. I ask for your vote on November 8th.
Thank you. Closing argument, Misty.
I'd like to start off by thanking the Chamber for hosting this and the college for hosting it. I'd like to thank you, Deb, for moderating it. Appreciate you. And Clark, thank you for participating. It was nice to have a conversation with you. As a former owner of bomb shooting supplies, I'm an unequivocal supporter of the Second Amendment. Unlike some in our country, I do not support voting in favor of any restrictions to it. I will represent the people because I am the people. I'm a mother, foster parent, former small business owner. I've watched our community struggle, and I've watched it thrive. I am not here to be a politician. I'm here to change what the definition of a politician is. I would really appreciate your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Before you sneak off, it went pretty quick. And the intention was to not open it up to the audience, but I don't know, how would the candidates feel about some audience questions? Would you be okay with that?
Ask
Are there any questions from the audience before George?
In the last legislative session, the legislature, I think very fortunately, and I congratulate them, proposed and passed a 5% raise for all state employees. But community college employees of the 8 community colleges around the state were only given a 3% raise. And all of us had to come back to our community colleges and explain to them, hopefully well, that how we were limited by that restriction, because everywhere in the state we're all suffering from this economic downturn. My question is that if you go back to the legislature, will you support giving community college employees that extra 2%?
All right.
Representative Stith.
Mr. Trustee Edmund, thank you so much for the question. I'm a big supporter of the community college, having had the privilege of serving as a trustee on the Western Wyoming Community Board years ago. We were able to last year get $11 million for this college to replace some of its infrastructure. And then this session, we were able to get another $5.4 million for the nursing annex. On compensation, the state employees actually got more of an increase than what you mentioned. They actually got, on average, a 7.9% increase. And it's true that the community colleges got only about half that, which was a product of the formula, whereas the community colleges rely for about half of their funding on local sources. And so that's explained the discrepancy there. I believe we do need to pay our community college professors and staff competitive wages. It seems wrong to me, for example, that right now the University of Wyoming, we spend $20,000 per year per student on a full-time basis. K through 12, we spend $16,000 per year per full-time student. But for community colleges, the state is paying about $13,000. And so there's this discrepancy. So I've been long an advocate for making parity between K through 12, the university, and the community colleges. So we're working on that, and that was difficult to swallow, I'm sure. it was a raise, but not the raise that the other state employees got.
Ms. Morris?
Obviously, Clark knows a lot more about what numbers go with what college level and what school age level. But yes, I would like to see the community colleges get a fair raise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. If we give a round of applause, that was very good.
I'd first like to thank Rock Springs Chamber of Commerce for hosting us, Ms. Deb Sutton. Thank you for your time for moderating today, and our viewers that are tuning in. I would be remiss if I did not also take a moment to congratulate our Chamber's CEO, Rick Lee, for winning the State Chamber Director of the Year Award. Congratulations, and I look forward to watching the Chamber's continued success on your watch. My name is Marshall Burt, and for 2 years I have had the honor of serving as your state representative from House District 39. I am also the first and only representative in Wyoming who does not answer to either the Republican or the Democrats, and instead represents the Libertarian Party. I am a third voice in American politics and an individual who works tirelessly to build bridges and gets things done for Sweetwater County and Wyoming. Being an independent voice, a person with no party masters or any special interests to answer to, I have been one of the most successful first-term legislators in Wyoming, and have also built strong relationships with party leaders from all sides of the aisle. I have been recognized by the Evidence-Based Wyoming, WyoVote, and CPAC for being one of the most fiscally conservative legislators in Wyoming, dedicated to keeping your taxes low, and have also worked with civil liberty groups such as Normal, the ACLU, and Equality State Center to work towards a more free and tolerant government. I have close friends who are the most conservative and the most progressive members of the legislature, and together we have accomplished a lot for Wyoming. As your representative, I have worked hard to put my own bias aside to build important friendships to accomplish real results. Aside from that, I have concrete ideas and plans to continue to improve our state, and I have a record of results. In my first term, I've sponsored 5 bills. 3 of those were tripartisan, which means sponsored by all 3 major parties in the legislature. I have also co-sponsored 34 additional bills. 7 of those were tripartisan, and drafted a letter to the Biden administration demanding that Wyoming's natural resources be opened up, laying out a roadmap for how the state and federal governments could enrich Wyoming's economy. My legislation and letter have been supported by leadership from both sides of the Republicans and the Democrats, and I have a strong working relationship that crosses those ideological lines. For me, running for office is not about myself. It's not about my party or special interests. For too long, I have seen a nation divided over the letter behind the name on a ballot. We aren't working for a better Wyoming or a better country. We are working to protect the status quo. I ran for office to raise the bar in politics, to bring the voice of the people to the main stage. With me, you know what you get. I answer to the people. My goal is prosperity and liberty. I'm asking for your vote on election day to keep working for the people. In return, I will always stand up for you, your family, our Constitution, and our freedom.
Thank you. Opening statement, Mr. Wiley.
Hello. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. I'd like to take a minute to thank the Rock Springs Chamber of Commerce, Western Wyoming Community College, Ms. Sutton for moderating, and Marshall for coming and discussing our platforms. I was born and raised here in Wyoming, a resident of Sweetwater County for most of my life. I graduated from Rock Springs High School, followed by an associate's degree from Western Wyoming Community College. I then went on to earn my bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Wyoming. I chose to return home and went to work for my family's construction company. In doing so, I gained a blue-collar education on how our economy worked here in Sweetwater County. It did not take long for me to understand how state-level decisions can affect us here at home so drastically in one way or another. I've been a Republican for as long as I could vote. The conservative values I grew up with my family and community have guided me in my decisions in life. I believe in strong family principles. I will defend our Second and First Amendment rights. I believe Wyoming has a right to govern itself and not a group of people pushing a national political agenda or people in Washington, D.C. that have never stepped foot in Wyoming. Wyoming needs to defend our water rights. It's vital not only to our way of life, but to our industries as well. I believe the most important issue we currently face is diversification of our economy. We need to keep taxes low, but at the same time, we don't need the counterproduction, not investing in our infrastructure to foster growth in the private sector. I'm Cody Wiley. I'm running for House District 39. Vote Wiley in November for your family and mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. The first question then will go to you from Representative Burt. Libertarian to Cody Wiley, a Republican. The question is, your only campaign issue is diversifying Wyoming's economy. If elected, what would you do differently than Representative Burt to diversify Wyoming's economy?
Yes, so we need to look at Wyoming as a safe harbor state. And if we will help commit dollars for infrastructure, not become victim to regression and not doing it while we can now and waiting for later. We live in a capitalistic system. There's always going to be inflation. It's always going to cost more later. So if we'll invest it now to where we have turnkey opportunities, I believe, our cities don't burn. We don't have riots. If the opportunity's there, they will come. Corporations will come. Different industries will come. We have everything in Sweetwater County and Wyoming on the natural resource base to do a lot of production here. Computer chips, fiber optics, glass, it's all here. So if we do the right things to foster growth, then it will come, and then we can stand out of the way as a government. So we don't want to be, I am from the government and I'm here to help you, most famously said. But we also need the infrastructure and stuff there that private industry cannot do to come here. So we don't want to get in their way. We want to help bolster and foster growth here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burt, a question to you.
Thank you. I would say I would continue on the path that I've gone. We have already looked at, we could talk to businesses, which we have done, and we can say we could throw as much money as we want at them, and we have done so. And we have yet to see that large growth to diversify that economy, because we do know is that when the government gets involved, it doesn't help. Wyoming lacks the infrastructure, and we also lack the workforce that once our students and our kids go to school and get their education, they leave the state. And having that doesn't help us as a whole, right? So without the workforce and the infrastructure in place, we're not going to be able to diversify that economy. Bringing in businesses. The way we can diversify that economy is by reducing regulations, which I have done, supporting broad sweeps of reducing regulations, and of course, always trying to keep the tax base low for the businesses, allowing them to invest in their businesses and allowing them to invest back into our communities. And that's how we get to diversify.
To you, Cody, a rebuttal?
Yeah, I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not saying that the government needs to pick winners and losers here when we're talking about working with private industry. I'm advocating for helping the growth of the private industry through infrastructure projects, which my opponent, he's voted against them frequently. I believe that is key, and it's going to push us into the future.
Thank you. A rebuttal?
Of course, thank you. So when we talk about how the private industry is not able to come into the state of Wyoming and help diversify the economy, then the only other way to do this is by the public sector. When public sector is in the very nature the government. And whenever government gets involved, then the public sector is always going to fail and lose. Because as a private industry and a private business, whenever you have to actually compete with the open checkbook of the government, which is the taxpayer's dollar, you're always going to lose. So having industry come in and trying to compete with the state on trying to bring in industry here, then why would they invest their dollars when the government has an endless pocketbook to invest? So saying that the private industry can't do it is not the way to go. Pushing more government is not the way. We've already seen more government involved. So we've already seen it doesn't work, and continuing to that same model for decades past of the decades we've seen is not going to get us a more diversified economy.
Cody, a 1-minute point of order.
Yeah, I just want to hammer home, I am not advocating for the growth of government. Again, it's keeping our infrastructure up to date and modernized. That will help us tremendously. We've lost a lot, especially in Sweetwater County, because we couldn't get the infrastructure to the projects. The distribution center in Cheyenne with Walmart, that was on the table several years ago. We lost that. We lost that. Why? Because we couldn't get water to it. So let's make sure we can get roads, water, fiber optic infrastructure, and sewer to these places. And if that happens, we're not picking winners and losers. It's not the government getting into the public sector. It's just helping foster the growth of the private sector. And I just want to hammer that home. Thank you very much.
Representative Burt.
Again, now, to be clear on some of my infrastructure voting some of this was done well before I became an elected official in the office. And I would really like to know which particular infrastructure measure that, aside from the broadband, which is government actually propping up private industry with taxpayer dollar, that I actually voted against to bring into the state of Wyoming. I voted in favor of supporting and pushing for the measure to get in the nuclear plant. And of course, I've actually been a huge supporter of the hydro industry that we're looking at seeing. And reducing government regulations is the main key to go. We can see individual companies such as Caltech coming into the state and even into the city. And that's all by reducing regulation, not by propping up and putting more taxpayer dollars into infrastructure and into private businesses. We need to get out of the way and let the industries work themselves out. And when we reduce the regulations and burdens, the industries will come.
Thank you. I see that we may need another 1 minute point of order. If you would so choose, Mr. Wiley.
Sure, if we're going to talk about broadband, so 22% of Wyomingites don't have access to high-speed internet. So if you don't have access to high-speed internet, I don't see how you could run a corporation in today's world and compete nationally or even globally. That was SF0076. Another one for the economic development was SF0067, and it was about capital construction. Now, this is talking about attrition, so it's spending some money on the capital in Cheyenne. If we don't do it today, it's going to cost multiple times more in the future, and we can't let it go because we need to advocate for that. There are several others, wastewater projects, HB006, he voted no for, and that was for water and wastewater projects. All this is needed. All this is going to help development and help growth. Thank you.
That goes to you, Representative Burt.
That is a perfect segue into it when you say that government getting into private industry to help something like broadband would completely and directly actually compete against individuals such as Elon Musk and the Starlink, which happens to be a private company pushing internet broadband across the globe, not just here in Wyoming. And that is a complete, that's a perfect example to where an individual and a private company gets to push the infrastructure itself, knowing that he or she can make a dollar on their own. When we look at how the state is looking to spend tax dollars, which is individuals, for those of us that pay our taxes, which is almost everybody in here, those dollars are going to prop up industries that don't put the infrastructure in those areas themselves because they know it's not profitable. So if we're going to continue to put taxpayer dollars into private industry, into industries in areas that aren't profitable, then we will always continue to lose our return on investment.
Thank you. 1/3 and final 1 minute point of order before we do closing arguments. It's to you, Mr. Wiley.
Thank you. So we can look at surrounding states that, for an example, such as Utah, they've had a silicon boom. They've put money into development, and they've seen results and benefits from that. We can look at local communities. Cheyenne, for every dollar invested, they're getting 5 and change in return. Especially when you're talking about broadband, it's to benefit everybody. It's to benefit every private industry, private corporation. That's not the government getting too involved. That's providing an essential service, and that's truly what I believe. It's not government oversight. It's just providing an essential service that we need drastically here in Wyoming if we want to compete on today's scale and today's world as a state and a community. Thank you.
Thank you. The last 1 minute goes to Marshall.
Thank you. I would, again, argue that that is direct government involvement, and there's nowhere out there in any of our Federalist Papers that states that broadband and internet is an essential function of government. So when we look at the essential functions of government, and that's not in there, then yes, that is outside the reach and the scope of the government. Anytime the government gets involved outside its scope, it always has to depend on the tax dollars of the individual. Thank you.
Thank you both. We have closing arguments. The first will go to...
Yeah. I think the second question.
Second question.
Oh, we haven't even done that. See, I told you I would mess up. My goodness, that was fun though. Okay. This question from Cody Wiley, a Republican candidate. His question to Representative Marshall Burt, a Libertarian. Representative Burt, you serve on the 2022 Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee, and during this committee's August 25th meeting, you made a motion to formulate a third-party agency to oversee elections. This motion passed, and the Legislative Service Office will now draft a bill that will be introduced during the 2023 legislative session. Please explain why you support removing the official duties of overseeing elections from the Secretary of State, and, if passed, will this not undermine the will of the voters who will have duly elected any future or current official holding this office?
So a little bit of clarification on that. First, when the LSO drafts a bill to be heard in Corporations Committee, that bill now comes back to the Corporations Committee for us to work the bill. It is not an automatic bill that goes to the floor. So a little bit of miscommunication on that, and a little misinformation is not always good when it comes into how we write law. What will happen is that bill will come back to the corporations, but we'll look at that, where we'll get to review it, and we'll either vote on passing that or not passing it. If it passes, then it goes to the floor. And the reason that motion was passed is when we look at Representative Gray, who was voted through his primary and won his primary. Some of the concerns I have is, I have a current bill out that the Corporations Committee took, which was ballot order. What that bill does is actually equalize the voting method and positions on the ballot for all parties, including independents. And Chuck Gray decided to vote against that in order to protect party over the individual voter himself or the candidates. A couple other concerns I have with Chuck Gray is removing ballot boxes to where we can drop ballots. We have a lot of rural communities and a lot of residents that live in our rural communities that can't make the normal downtown election cycle, so they rely on these boxes in order to get their ballots heard. And Chuck Gray has already promised to remove those, putting a burden on our voting population. The other concern I have is that Chuck Gray is also pushing that we will have fraud, election fraud, in our 2024 election, and we have yet to even get through the 2022 election. Now, for those that have studied this, there is absolutely zero evidence based in the state of Wyoming that there's actually any fraud that happened in the last election. So with no fraud based, what are we actually basing his determination on why he wants to remove some of these items on? The idea for the draft bill was to put a better checks and balances for more elected officials, so we have greater accountability for our voting residents.
Thank you. Your question back to you, Cody.
Yeah, hi. Hey, Marshall, no offense, but I wouldn't have touched that with a 10-foot pole. We're not only talking about undermining the Secretary of State of Wyoming, but we're talking about taking away the power of the public vote. And that needs to be the most sanctified thing that we have in our form of government. It doesn't matter if you don't like a person. If they haven't reached office and they haven't committed a foul or a wrongdoing, then you gotta give them a fair shake and you gotta let them go. If not, it's a slap in the face to everybody that made that vote, and that's what we do every term. The next thing you'll know, we're gonna be governed by mandates and by appointed boards. Some people may not like the way you vote, but I'm not advocating for somebody to appoint a board to take over your duties. I just don't believe that we should do that, and we need to defend the sanctity of our vote and the public's vote. It's drastically and very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebuttal.
Yes, thank you. So pushing the measure is different than actually opening up a discussion. And if we ever want to talk about election integrity, then let's look at how the laws are written for third parties. The laws that Chuck Gray is looking at changing, the rules that he's trying to promulgate out of his office, will directly affect the voters of this state. Just because he believes that fraud will happen without actual clear evidence of it. So why do we get to look at the ability of disenfranchising our voters because of personal opinion from one individual? it isn't removing the rules from one individual. It actually opens it up to the 5 top elected officers in the state, including the governor himself. It isn't moving it from an elected official to appointed individuals. It's a greater oversight to make sure that the people in all our areas, both in the rural and the urban areas in our state, all have the equal representation at the ballot box, if they can actually get their voice to the ballot box.
That goes to you now, Cody.
So my question would be, did Mr. Gray do this? Has it happened yet? What happened to due process? We can't be premature on the way that we govern. There could have been a different bill drafted and another way to handle this. It's just not the right thing to do.
We will go into a 1-minute point of order if you would like a rebuttal, Marshall.
So again, due process, taking away ballot boxes from rural communities because you assume there's fraud when there's no evidence of fraud. That's not quite due process. Drafting a bill and passing a bill are two completely different entities of how legislation happens. Drafting a bill allows us to actually look at the language. And again, just because a bill's drafted doesn't mean I have to vote for it if the language actually truly takes away the power of the Secretary of State and his rulemaking. We draft a lot of bills in order to be able to put discussions on the floor. And whether or not we want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, that's what we do as legislators. We hear language and we hear rules and we hear items that aren't always comfortable. But having a discussion on whether it's for or against or the best interest of Wyoming and our residents is what we do. Now, again, just because a bill was drafted doesn't mean it's something I'm going to vote for. As a matter of fact, corporations, as on Thursday and Friday this week, if everybody wants to tune in, go ahead and tune in. And when we review the language and look at that, that's when I make my termination.
Okay, that goes back to Cody.
Again, it's not even the fact that you voted for it. You made the motion. And I don't believe that the motion should have even been made. If you wanted to make a motion on changing the authority of the Secretary of State, then that's totally within your power. You could have done that. But we're doing it now after the public vote has been pushed through in the primary, and all the people that voted yes for Mr. Gray, we are now saying your vote doesn't count. We're changing it, and we're going to govern the way we want. That's not America. That's not the Wyoming I want to live in, and I will defend your vote. Thank you.
A second 1-minute point of order, I think, is expected. Marshall?
Thank you. So we keep talking about those that voted for Chuck Gray. And if you've ever been to a Chuck Gray rally, as we want to call that, and actually listen to him speak, then we also have to listen and carry the voices of those that didn't vote for Chuck Gray because of the messages and what he was trying to push. At first he came out, he was going to change the law and realized he got a lot of pushback on that, and now he wants to try to change some of those laws through support through the legislative body. So there's always the metric of those that vote for an individual and those that don't vote for an individual. But we always have to be able to carry the voices of all those people. And again, there's a lot of concerns for where Chuck Gray wants to take the Secretary of State's office, how he wants to control the voices of those that want to vote within the state, and that was my primary concern for even making the motion. Thank you. Mr.
Wiley, final rebuttal.
Yeah, again, I just want to make the point that if wrongdoing happens, then we have contingencies to take care of that. If we don't like the way Mr. Gray does his job as Secretary of State, the next elections, the public can take care of that as well. And I just want to hammer that home, that we don't need to govern by an elector mandates or somebody putting a third-party body into taking away power from the elected officials within the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will go to closing arguments. Representative Marshall Burt, Libertarian, will go first.
Thank you again to the Chamber for hosting this event, and thank you to those that chose to take time to listen to this discussion. In 2020, House District 39 took a chance on sending a Libertarian to the Wyoming House State Legislature, and the trust that district placed in me has not been lost. For 2 years, I have worked to represent all of the people in Sweetwater County, despite their party. I have worked to build relationships with leadership, conservatives, moderates, and independents. I work to be the bridge between the ideological divide that only hurts the Wyoming family. As a first-term legislator, I was able to pass legislation with unanimous support and was appointed to the Powerful Corporations Committee. My opponent has said that he wants to have a unified voice for Sweetwater County. It's not about ideas or a better future for Wyoming. It's about advancing a party agenda, about being another voice in the sea of voices who represent a party line rather than what's best for the state and our families. As your representative, I will work to continue to get things done that mean real progress for real Wyoming families. I have been a dedicated servant of my country and my state and my family and my friends, not just for all Wyoming families. I always vow to keep more money back into your pockets where it belongs, not in the pockets of government. Having more choice in your children's education and protecting our civil liberties that are so fragile.
Thank you. We'll now hear.
Yeah, sorry. Paper got hung up. If elected for a second term, I will work tirelessly for parents and students as they work toward better education options for Wyoming working families, as they struggle to keep up with inflation for Wyoming patients seeking health care for those that work for them. For me, this isn't about a title. It isn't about a pleasing party bosses, and this isn't about pushing those special interest issues. This is about making Wyoming a better place. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th, and together we can improve Wyoming's future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Byrd. We'll now go to a closing argument from Republican candidate Cody Wiley.
Thank you. With over a decade of experience in construction management, the education Wyoming has provided me, a year and a half with the planning and zoning of the city of Rock Springs as vice chair, I believe I can contribute to the state and the county that I love. I've chosen to start and raise my family here, grow my family business, and give back to the communities. I want to defend our way of life that is so special and unique to Wyoming and Sweetwater County. I promise I will not push a national agenda or be influenced by outside political parties. I will work for my neighbors, my friends, and my family. I will stick to our conservative values, responsible spending, efficiencies in our systems and projects, rolling back red tape in Cheyenne, helping our local companies flourish. I will advocate responsible practices towards wide open spaces and to protect the wildlife that depends on it. I will fight to keep our coal mines open, our pump jacks pumping, and the use of natural gas as a green energy source. At the same time, I will push for economic reform, diversification, and development. We need to invest in our private sector growth with water, sewer, communications, and roads, keeping taxes low while maintaining our way of life with good paying jobs. As a young man, I was told everything you do has your name on it. I'll say it again. I've decided to put my name on this. I'm no politician. This is my first run for political office, but I promise to put the work in, help my state and my neighbors for a better life, leveling out the boom and the bust cycle. I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let us not let fear deter us because we have a bright future as Wyomingites. I ask again, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's fight for Wyoming and Sweetwater County. Vote Wiley this November, and thank you for your time.
Thank you both for your time, and thank you for a lively debate.
Opportunity to understand who and what they're voting for. My name is Scott Heiner. I represent House District 18, which encompasses a lot of small communities and larger communities. North Rock Springs, North Green River, Granger, Kemmer, Diamondville, Cokeville, North Evanston, McKinnon. It's a huge, huge area with a diversity of people that we're trying to represent. And as a candidate, we can make many promises and pledges, but the proof is how we act after we are elected. And many times I have seen elected officials not hold true to their promises after they're elected. So I encourage you to look at my voting record. Look at what's happened during the past 2 years. 2 years ago, we were struggling. Kemmer Diamondville was about ready to close down and become similar to South Detroit. Since then, we just heard this morning in Southwest Wyoming, in the next 5 years, we could gain 5,800 permanent jobs. I was instrumental in changing the nuclear laws here in Wyoming. I was one of 3 prime sponsors for the nuclear bill that made it possible to bring nuclear to Wyoming. And I lobbied and had lunch with the officials that were making that decision to ultimately locate in Kemmer, Wyoming. That saved a lot of jobs, or will save a lot of jobs as the power plant closes and transitions away from coal. But our coal miners are still at risk. So I'm working hard to preserve our coal mine there in Kemmer. And I'm proud to say there's a very good possibility we've got another industry coming in that will actually double the size of that coal mine. And it will require that we move the Highway 30 so that we can create more space for that coal mine to expand. I've co-sponsored the voter ID bill. I've co-sponsored the anti-abortion bill, the trigger bill as we've called it. I have been very involved in doing what I promised I would do when I came in. We reduced government by 15%, and hopefully you haven't seen any changes in your level of service after changing that 15% in government. There's still some opportunities to reduce government, to reduce regulations. There are ranchers down in McKinnon that are struggling because their fees for reservoirs on forest land has raised from $260 a year up to $10,000 a year. I've been working with the Forest Service trying to change that, and now I'm up to our congressional representatives to change that.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Laughlin.
All right. Thank you to everyone in attendance and online. Representative Heiner for taking the debate, Rock Springs Chamber, and Western Wyoming Community College for hosting us. Got to say it's a little bit surreal for me being in here. I graduated with honors from Western Wyoming Community College, and the last time I was in this room, I walked in the door just in time to see the second tower fall on the screen behind us, so a little heavy for me. But my name is Dennis Laughlin. I'm the Libertarian candidate for House District 18, which was recently redistricted, and Representative Heiner already outlined the area there. I'm a lifelong resident of Green River, Wyoming, father of 3. I'm the owner and operator of Flaming Gorge Harley Davidson, my family-owned business, been in continuous operation for 36 years. Let's see, I'm also the vice chairman for the Sweetwater County Libertarian Party, as well as board member for the Libertarian Party for the state of Wyoming. I am a staunch believer and advocate of self-determination and personal responsibility. I believe that the best government is a limited government, focused on the basic functions of government, executed with judicious fiscal responsibility that also fosters rather than encroaches on civil liberties. All of which I believe are founding principles of our country that are in short supply in the modern political arena. I've assisted Representative Burt on drafting some of his bills. On several occasions, I've spent some time in both the House chambers and in committees, as well as watching online. So I'm pretty familiar with the processes and procedures. Opportunity knocked when the redistricting moved me out of Representative Burt's area and into Heiner's district. So decided I'd go ahead and throw my hat in the ring and see what came of it. So as such, I'm looking forward to possibly representing House District 18 in the 67th legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Given that, you will take the first question. Did I just get turned around?
Yeah. Scott went first. So.
Right, so Dennis's question to Scott. Right. For some reason, I just lost my mind. Sorry about that. Dennis Laughlin, a question to Scott Heiner. Considering the COVID lockdowns and the overturning of Roe v. Wade, individual medical freedom is on the minds of many constituents of House District 18. Do you believe that there is a limit to an individual's ability to make their own medical decisions? If so, where does that limit exist for you when considering the legislation that you choose to support or not?
Thank you very much. I supported legislation that would have limited the COVID lockdowns during our special session. I voted for that. Unfortunately, we came away with nothing very concrete or valid that would really impact our state. As the governor shut our state down, it didn't change much. I believe strongly in individual liberties. to the point where they do not impact others. And by allowing abortions, that impacts a living person. I do not believe abortions are victimless. You're killing a young baby, a fetus, that is alive. They have sonograms that show when during an abortion that where the baby is screaming and pulling away from that procedure. Now, is it victimless? Absolutely not. Does our liberties allow us to kill someone, to murder? Absolutely not. So I do not believe that having liberties that we fight so hard for can affect other people just because we feel like we have the freedom to act.
Thank you. Thanks. Next, Mr. Laughlin.
Thank you. I do not believe that it is for me or for anyone, for that matter, to dictate the limitations of your medical decisions. I believe that that extends beyond just an abortion issue, which is obviously a huge national issue right now. I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to sway anybody one way or another when it comes to abortion. You either are on one side or another. And I'm not going to be the guy to change your mind on any of that. However, like 80% of Wyomingites, I proudly support the legalization of medical marijuana because we know that no one should go to jail for treating arthritis, cancer, multiple sclerosis, etc. I'm also an ardent supporter of freedom in end-of-life decisions, which is why I would push a bill so that no one would be forced to spend their life savings so they can die a slow, painful, and undignified death because they have someone else's overreaching sense of moral superiority. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, a rebuttal?
Yes, I would like to go back to the abortion and the issue there. In the Wyoming Constitution, Section 20 says it's the duty of the legislature to protect and promote health and morality of the people. That's what we tried to do with the trigger bill, the anti-abortion bill, is promote the health and morality of our citizens by protecting these unborn children, protecting them from being murdered, which essentially is what happens during an abortion. We are protecting individuals.
Thank you. Rebuttal?
Yes, unfortunately, Article 1, Section 38 of the Wyoming Constitution that was passed back in 2012, 80% of Wyoming voters agreed to on ballot initiative that an individual, a competent adult, is free to make their own healthcare decisions, which puts us in direct conflict with the trigger law that you pushed, and we'll see how all that works out when it comes to the judicial arguments that are happening right now. Unfortunately, in none of what you just said did I hear anything other than abortion. So I ask you direct, what is your opinion on medical marijuana and death with dignity? Where are you at with that, please, Scott?
Okay, we'll have a second point of order.
Thank you. I have done some reading about the Libertarian Platform as adopted in May of 2022 in Nevada, and it says the use of drugs for medicinal and recreational purposes is they are in favor of repealing all laws for the use of drugs for medicinal and recreational purposes. So that extends medical marijuana to recreational marijuana according to your own platform. And it also says that you're willing to be like Oregon and dissolve all laws against illegal drugs. And we've seen what's happened up in Oregon over the past year. Their crime has gone through the roof because they made it legal for all drugs in Oregon. Do we really want to go there with Wyoming?
Dennis?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, because Oregon made the decision to go very far with their legalizations, you in no way support the legalization of marijuana. You do not support a person's ability to make their own end-of-life decisions because of what Oregon did.
Second point of order, go ahead.
Thank you. I do not support the legalization of recreational marijuana or recreational drugs, and I don't think it's going to help us. I'm just reading from the platform from the Libertarian Party as ratified and adopted in this year, that the Libertarian Party says that they will legalize all drugs, including all illegal drugs at this point, similar to Oregon. So we see what that's done in Oregon. Do we want that to happen here in Wyoming as well?
That goes back to you.
So no, then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we are going to go to closing statements, and...
No, he has a question yet. Second question.
Oh, that's right. I do that every time. Thank you. I'm glad everyone else is on the ball. I get so wrapped up in these questions that you guys are doing great. It's fascinating. Okay, I apologize. Again, I apologize. Representative Scott Heiner, a Republican, his question to candidate Dennis Laughlin, a Libertarian. Do you agree with and support the Libertarian platform that was adopted this year, which includes legalizing prostitution, legalizing recreational marijuana and other addictive drugs that are currently illegal, legalizing all forms of gambling, abolishing the Social Security system, legalizing euthanasia, and repealing the federal income tax and funding public services with voluntary contributions?
Wow, a lot to unpack there. Thank you, Scott. When it comes to the National Libertarian Party, yes, they have a huge platform, and the end game for the Libertarian Party is certainly to increase freedom without causing harm. Now, whether a person chooses to participate in some of the things that were listed right there, which I can't get into all of them, the idea would be that if it is a victimless crime, where is the crime? A lot of people will take a look at that and say, oh, well, drugs create crime. And well, I have to say, the things that people do for that, are for drugs or some of the other things listed, are already illegal. If somebody wants to do drugs, they're going to commit crime to do that. So to continuously lock people up and remove hardened, violent criminals, release people like that into our society because we have to make room for some guy that got busted with some marijuana on the highway, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And I would much prefer to see violent criminals stay in prison and people's lives not get ruined with felony charges for what I consider to be victimless crimes.
Thank you. Scott, in answer to your question.
So these are yes/no questions, and you've already answered that you support legalizing marijuana and other addictive drugs, and you've also said that you support legalizing euthanasia. So yes or no, do you support yourself, not the Libertarian Party, but you yourself? Do you support legalizing prostitution? Do you support legalizing all forms of gambling? Do you support abolishing the Social Security system? And do you support repealing the income tax and funding our government with charitable or voluntary contributions? Yes or no?
Go ahead.
Yes. However, as an elected representative for the state of Wyoming, I don't believe that any of that will happen anytime in my lifetime. What I do think can happen in my lifetime is the legalization of medical marijuana. I do think that what can happen in my lifetime is a death with dignity bill that allows people to make their own end-of-life decisions. You hold sole dominion over your life, and you alone should make those decisions. Am I going to attempt to push a prostitution bill in the state of Wyoming? No. Thank you.
We will go for a 1-minute point of order, starting with you, Scott.
Thank you. So, a question I have in my mind is if a medical marijuana bill comes forward for debate, and it probably will, and if someone puts an amendment to that bill to legalize recreational drugs, as far as all drugs that are currently illegal, it's a victimless crime, so you say, although the stats in Oregon show differently. For the past year, their crime rates have gone up from 20 to 80%, depending on what particular crime you want to focus on. Would you vote for that amendment to be added to the marijuana bill? If it got added, would you vote for that amendment?
Dennis?
Yes.
Now I think we can,
Okay.
we can go for closing arguments. We'll try this one more time.
Though I think that would kill the bill, so I don't think that would be a very good idea.
Is there any need for another 1-minute point of order? Because we can grant that. Okay.
All right, good.
Okay, then we will go into closing arguments, and we will start with Representative Scott Heiner, a Republican for House District 18.
Thank you, and this has been a good opportunity. Thank you, Dennis, for this opportunity of sharing thoughts. Our opinions may differ, but I think we all want to do what's best, in our opinion, for what the state is. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm serving, is because I want to give back to the state. There's many things left to do. I believe property tax reform is highest on my list right now, with second followed up by sexualization of our youth and children. Children should be in an age of innocence, and yet we're seeing the sexualization of those with gender identity. We have so much depression with our youth right now because they cannot figure out what they belong to, what their gender is. I think another priority is prohibiting transgender athletes in women's sports, prohibiting crossover during our elections. There's a number of things left to do. I want to continue working for the people of the state. I wear the badge of representative with honor. That's a title I bear with great honor because I want to represent the constituents and citizens of Wyoming. I take it seriously. I spend a great deal of time because we need more representatives, more people to represent us as we get hammered by the heavy fist of government. And I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to go up against government to represent you in Cheyenne. Thank you very much for being here. Your participation, your attendance shows your level of conviction to make Wyoming great and to continue for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will now hear from Dennis Laughlin, a Libertarian for House District 18.
Okay. Thanks again, everyone here and online. Representative Heiner for the very spirited debate. Rock Springs Chamber and WWCC here. I know and I love our state. We shoot straight and we call it how we see it. We work hard. Mining, oil and gas, railroading, ranching. This is not safe nor easy work. It's a hard-fought dollar. I believe that you know best how to spend your dollars, not me nor anybody else. The tax revenue generated by the sweat of your brow ought to be held sacred by those entrusted with which to spend it, and that's exactly what I will do if elected. My respect and admiration for the people of the state of Wyoming and my desire to help and support you is what drove me to volunteer as an advanced EMT for Castle Rock for a number of years, and what is now drives me to be a member of our state legislature. It is my hope that all, or at least some of what I've said here today will resonate with the constituents of House District 18. I realize that there are far more issues that you're facing than we can cover in this debate today. I actually thought that we were going to cover a lot more. Sorry about that. If you're wondering what my stance is on a given issue, just ask yourself, what solution to this issue favors the maximum amount of self-determination and liberty at the minimum of taxpayer expense and government intrusion? You probably have what my answer right there. If that's not good enough, then I can be contacted directly, Dennis@LaughlinForLiberty.com. Also have a website, same, LaughlinForLiberty.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you both so much. This was a great and, as you said, spirited debate for House District 18. Thank you both again. Okay, welcome back. We are here with the House District 17 candidates, Representative Chad Banks, a Democrat, and candidate J.T. Larson, a Republican. The first, in the coin toss, the opening statement goes to Chad Banks first.
Thank you. Ooh. That's not too loud. Again, my name is Chad Banks. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting, the college, Wildfire News, and Deb Sutton, and my opponent for being here, and all of you. I've spent 20 plus years working in public service here in Sweetwater County and volunteering locally for the betterment of our community and our state. I'm a fifth generation resident and represent you because I am you. I'm a son, a brother, a father, and a new grandfather. I've always been a champion for Rock Springs and Sweetwater County, and that's how I spend my time in Cheyenne, championing our community. I've served the state and the community in many aspects as a volunteer for Wyoming Special Olympics, NowCap, Cowboys Against Cancer. I've served on the University of Wyoming Alumni Association Board of Directors, the Wyoming Rural Development Council, the Wyoming Travel Industry Coalition, and many others. I have a degree from the University of Wyoming and previously served 3 terms on the Rock Springs City Council, also serving as the council president. I was initially elected to the state legislature in 2020 and currently serve on 4 committees there. I serve on the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee, Select Water, School Facilities, and Capital Exhibits. I'm running for re-election to continue serving the folks of Rock Springs and Sweetwater County and be your consummate champion. Rock Springs needs a respected and confident voice in Cheyenne, and I want to continue being that voice. I'm a champion for our community, and I spend my time in the legislature doing just that. I've established a network of individuals and contacts over my 20 plus years and use those to fight for our community in Cheyenne. We're facing a lot of challenges, and it takes a respected and networked voice to stand up to the folks in Cheyenne, and I want to continue being that voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to Mr. Larson.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here, Representative Banks, Deb Sutton, our moderator, and the audience for attending this debate. First, I will give you a brief background on why I chose to run for Wyoming House District 17. Then I will move on to how I plan to represent you at the Wyoming legislature. You may be wondering why I chose to run. One of the reasons is to follow in my grandfather's footsteps. He was a representative in the Montana legislature for 3 terms beginning in the 1960s. I graduated from Rock Springs High School and have completed an associate's degree in business administration from Western Wyoming Community College. Currently, I am a handful of classes away from receiving my bachelor's in accounting from the University of Wyoming. While my interest in politics has been short, my aspirations for a better Sweetwater County and Wyoming have been with me since my childhood. Community service has been a core value of mine since 2010 when I started volunteering for the Rock Springs International Day Committee. Prior to 2010, I was active in the Holy Communion Episcopal Church youth group here in Rock Springs. In 2019, I was elected by the Episcopal Church of Wyoming to be a State of Wyoming representative at the National Convention. I was then selected to serve on the Credentials Committee and leadership at the convention. In 2014, I started participating in the Boy Scouts of America program, assisting with various projects in our community. Some of those projects included installing no poaching signs around the county, participating in food drives, building shelving for local school teachers, and my Eagle Scout project, restoring the Rotary Club of Rock Springs American flag trailers. My project was recognized as Eagle Scout Project of the Year for Trapper Trails Council. In 2017, I was asked to serve on the International Day Committee as the volunteer coordinator. I assumed the position of event chairman in 2021. After many years of service to our community, I decided to become a member of the Kiwanis Club of Rock Springs. Over the years, I have developed connections with many people who represent business, industry, and education in Sweetwater County and across the state, and I look forward to developing more partnerships in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. The first question comes from JT to Chad, and that question is, what factor or factors played into you switching parties?
Yes, so I was a registered Republican for 30 plus years in Sweetwater County and switched about 4 or 5 years ago. The biggest reason was the platform of supporting marriage between one man and one woman. I am a gay man, I am married to my partner, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And I could no longer be a member of the Republican Party who didn't support my marriage and my family.
Thank you. That question now back to you.
I just wanted to note that I've been a registered Republican since I've been able to vote, and I believe in supporting all of the constituents, no matter how they feel on certain topics. I'm there to represent them no matter what, so thank you.
Chad, this goes back to you for a rebuttal.
Yeah, I think politics in Cheyenne are more than just party politics. It's all about relationships and who you know and who you can talk to. Be that leadership, be that serving on committees, be that staff, and I have those relationships. There's a reason most freshmen are appointed to one committee. I've been appointed to 4 because of that networking. The Speaker of the House and the presumptive speaker just invited me to attend next week a water workshop in Nevada because of that relationship, and they know that I do the homework, that I study, that I come prepared, and I have my facts and figures, and I know what I'm talking about. So developing those relationships and building those bridges is what's really important, more so than which party you're associated with.
JT, back to you.
I couldn't agree with you more, Chad, and I just wanted to note that the rubric that I would follow when preparing for a vote would be to review and research, ask questions and receive input from the various parties that will be impacted, and assess the data in order to make an informed decision for Sweetwater County and all of the constituents.
We do have time for a 1-minute point of order if anyone would like to ask this question.
Just to touch a little bit more on party politics in Cheyenne. As a member of the minority party, we're small. Obviously, there are 9 total Democrats elected in the both houses, and by virtue of that, that puts us in a lot of leadership positions. And so every Thursday morning during the session, we have breakfast with the governor at 7 a.m. before the session. That doesn't happen with any other representatives in Sweetwater County because on the Republican side, it's leadership that only gets to do those. On the Democratic side, I get to bend the governor's ear for an hour, one morning a week, and talk about the Bitter Creek project, talk about wastewater projects, talk about flooding. And so that gives me a really unique advantage that you don't have when you're a member of the majority party.
JT? Okay, we will move on to a question from Representative Chad Banks to candidate JT Larson. You have mentioned your support of education. Knowing the significant funding and FTE reductions public education has undergone, what would be your proposal, including amending or moving items from the block grant to alleviate this shortfall without impacting the existing state budget?
Thank you for that question, Chad. That's a great question. One of my primary goals as a legislator is creating opportunities for youth that encourage them to stay, live, work, and play in Wyoming. Our community colleges and K-12 system are the learning foundation for these opportunities. Through amazing partnerships with business and industry, we can work together to invest in the future of Wyoming. Western Wyoming Community College is a nationally recognized community college, and their adaptability to support economic changes in our communities and their alliance with business and industry is commendable. The legislature needs to collaborate with educators across the state to create opportunities that will continue growth of their students and develop a strong workforce. And that means creating a plan, working with all parties that are involved with the state budget to create something that's responsible, but good for all sides. So,
thank you, Chad.
Yeah, I think we need to be creative in how we do that. Obviously, the state is already being sued for not holding up our constitutional stances for funding education, and so how we're going to do that. We were saved, frankly, through COVID dollars, which bought us a few years, and we've kicked that can down the road. And so we need to be able to approach our tax structure, our education system. We have one of the most expensive education systems in the nation. And how can we consolidate school districts potentially? How can we get some economies of scale to make sure that we are educating students and making sure that they come out prepared, but keep our costs as low as possible? And so there's a bunch of ways to do that. There's been a whole bunch of ideas thrown around about a corporate tax. About looking at real estate transfer tax that really impacts the wealthy in Teton County, who should be paying their fair share as well.
Thank you. A rebuttal, JT?
yeah, I'll touch a little bit on taxes. Oftentimes we continue to do processes because it is the way we have always done them. And this is where I can come in and create new ways of thinking in the legislature when it comes to tax revenue, while making sure that we're not increasing taxes. Let's look at things that we've done for so many years and might not be applicable anymore. So that's my rebuttal.
Would either of you care to move into a 1-minute point of order? Okay, we do have more questions, and these, just so the candidates and the audience knows, these questions are inspired by a survey that the Chamber sent out to its membership asking what the most important topics they believed should be addressed by candidates. We think these would apply to you as well. Business and economic development was the #1 concern from Chamber investors in a recent survey which questioned, what are your top concerns for the legislature election? What do you intend to take to Cheyenne to represent Sweetwater County's interests in economic development? This will go to JT.
Thank you so much for that question. So the Wyoming Business Council has substantially contributed to the economic development of our state, as well as various other agencies and county agencies as well. Driving innovation and entrepreneurship opportunities and working with cities and communities is a great way to diversify our economy through sources like the SEDC and then the Wyoming Business Council. Eliminating statutory barriers will open up the gates for businesses to participate in our economy.
Thank you, Chad.
I think one of the pitfalls we always fall into is we don't value Wyoming and we don't value our people, and we're willing to give away tax breaks and tax initiatives to attract a business to our community. And we're always looking for the silver bullet, right? We're looking for the Honda manufacturer that's going to come in and create 3,000 jobs, and that's just not realistic. Wyoming has on the books about 55,000 small businesses in the state. About 19,000 of those small businesses have one employee, so they're not, necessarily run out of somebody's garage. They actually have an employee. What do we as a state need to do to help those small businesses grow by one employee? Imagine adding 19,000 new jobs to Wyoming by helping those businesses that are here. And maybe that's as a state we get out of the way. Maybe that's we help them with infrastructure development. Maybe that's we help them with patents, with licensing, with all of those kind of things. But how can we help those businesses that are here grow? And that's what I've done. That's why I'm supported by the Wyoming Business Alliance, why we just won the Wyoming Business Council's Innovation Award, because innovative thinking is what will help us win those jobs and create a better economy for our kids to live here.
Thank you. JT, rebuttal?
Well, I agree with everything Chad has said in that statement. I think that thinking big and shooting for the Honda facility is something that we should always be looking at. You never know when that big corporation is going to say, Wyoming is where we want to plant our roots for a new facility. And while working on smaller businesses and developing those is a great thing, and we should focus on that as well. Focusing on large businesses and getting them here is a great thing too.
Okay, I'm going to move on to another question that's kind of a rebuttal. Sorry, I forgot who we started with. Chad, a rebuttal.
Sure. No, I agree. I think obviously shooting for the stars and looking for those industries, but I do think we need to make sure our focus remains on those that have committed to Wyoming already, that live in Wyoming and have chosen to make Wyoming their place to do business and chosen this as their home.
In that same vein, I have another question. Diversification, this goes to you first, Chad. Diversification is always a word used in our state in conversations about economic development. What plans can you share with us regarding diversification?
I think one of the things that we need to look at is why we have such a brain drain from our students that are leaving our state to, once they graduate from university, once they graduate from Western, that go to live elsewhere, that put their roots down there. And there was just a thing I shared on my Facebook page yesterday about what those students want. And a lot of times we're doing things in directly opposite of what those students want. We're passing social regulations that go against what the students of our communities want and why they want to live here. And so that's one of the first things that I think we need to look at, is take a hard look at how we're passing those laws and who those laws are impacting. And why is it driving kids from our state to live elsewhere? There's a student from the University of Wyoming, from right here in Wyoming, who's talked about that. We've invested $16,500 in her education each year that she's been in K through elementary. She's won a Hathaway Scholarship, a County Commission Scholarship, and she's at the University of Wyoming. We pay for her entire education, and the minute she graduates, she is leaving because of some of what she feels like are attacks on her as a student. And I think those are the things that we really need to look at, how we attract those young folks and how we keep them here, because they're the spirit that's going to drive our future of our education. They're going to drive innovation, they're going to drive new businesses, and they're going to want to raise their children here. And so that's imperative to me, is how those social issues impact those children that we're sort of passing over.
JT, we'll toss the question to you.
Thank you so much. So yeah, my platform actually is about keeping young people here in Wyoming, and one of the things that I would like to see is for Wyoming to grow into a state where young people want to be here, and we need to create, or not create jobs, the government can't create jobs, but there needs to be jobs available that interest our students after they graduate high school and college. A lot of students are more interested in technology. They don't want to go down into a coal mine and work on that, although that's supported our way of life for so many years. That's just not what a lot of students are looking at now. They want to work in technology, work on computers, and so if we can develop that further, that would be great.
Thank you. Chad, a rebuttal?
Yeah, I think it's creative thinking, it's innovative, it's blockchain, it is looking at the hydrogen, it's looking at the nuclear plant. It's those kind of creative thinking and making sure that we have the regulatory environment out of Cheyenne to make sure that those jobs can come here. And then helping those students, encouraging them to stay here is critical.
Thank you. A rebuttal?
And this isn't something that the government necessarily can participate in, but as we grow our economy and more people come here, that means more other businesses will be coming here, as such things that are more fun for the younger generation. So I think that just pushing forward and working as hard as we can at the state level to provide opportunities for businesses is great.
Thank you. I do offer both of you a 1 minute point of order. No? I do have one final question, if I can find it. My organizational skills sometimes are lacking. Okay, this then goes first to Mr. J.T. Larson. Education in the state is a great concern. What proposals do you intend to make to address reductions in education while balancing the state budget?
I think that it all comes down to taking a look at our tax structure and ensuring we are not spending dollars where they don't necessarily need to be spent, and making sure that the education industry is spending the dollars appropriately and putting those dollars into proper silos for administrative and faculty positions.
Thank you. Chad?
You know, one of the things that's sort of been thrown around the and has never come to fruition is the idea of our school districts. We have 48 school districts in the state of Wyoming. I'm all for local control, but the fact that we have 2 school districts in Sweetwater County alone really seems to make those budgets incredibly top-heavy. And how can we combine those resources and gather some economies of scale? Campbell County can do it with 1 school district. There's no reason Sweetwater County can't. There are some unique features to look at that, like South Lincoln County versus North Lincoln County and some of the differences there. Certainly the reservation has different needs than Fremont County, but looking at some of those economies of scale and where we can combine school districts, I think is really one of the critical issues. The other issue, again, goes back to our youth. We're not attracting new teachers into Wyoming. We're having less and less teachers that are willing to license in Wyoming once they graduate from the University of Wyoming. They're licensing in other states. I was just listening to the Education Committee yesterday about some of these challenges and why aren't we able to attract those teachers? Partly because we're not paying enough, and partly because we are not respecting those teachers and those educators. We as legislators have thrown all kinds of barriers at education. We've called them names. We have thrown up all kinds of regulations about what they can teach, who they can teach, how they can teach. Let's get back to letting teachers teach our students, and that will also attract those teachers into our school districts as well.
JT?
While I agree that we need to let teachers teach and do their job, I think that it's important that we hold together our community values and make sure our teachers are teaching our students things that might potentially hurt them in the future.
Thank you. Chad? Rebuttal?
Yeah, with all due respect, and this is not meant necessarily at JT necessarily, but your community values may be different than my community values. And that's why as parents, it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're involved and that we know what our teachers are teaching. That's not for the government to dictate. That is not for anyone else to talk about. That is for me to know what my teachers are sending home. That's for me to know what those reading assignments are. That's for me to go to those parent-teacher conferences and make sure I'm communicating with those teachers and saying, these are things that are important to me. And if you're not teaching those, then I do find a place for my student that does respect those values. But I don't particularly want the government dictating what those values are from my perspective.
Mr. Larson, another 1 minute. Representative Banks? Another 1 minute? Okay. We will move into closing arguments. Representative Chad Banks, a Democrat for House District 17. Closing arguments.
We're facing a lot of challenges in the state, as we know, and the past couple of years with COVID, frankly, it has been a double-edged sword because the funding from COVID has allowed the state and our cities and counties and towns to do things that we really were not expected to be doing at this point. 3 major challenges that I see is education, making sure public lands remain in public hands, and economic diversification. I'm a proud supporter of education, teachers, and our youth, and I'm endorsed by the Wyoming Education Association. I've been a champion of small business. That's what my career is. I've also been celebrated by the Wyoming Business Alliance for standing up to government overreach and supporting our small workers. And then public lands and public hands. We're watching that play out, particularly in Carbon County with Corner Crossing. And we all value our public lands, be it hiking, recreating, RVing, hunting, fishing, and how do we make sure that we remain that those lands remain accessible to us and aren't closed off by wealthy landowners. Those are some of the issues that are really critical as we move forward, and I want to continue being your voice in Cheyenne. I want to champion those. Cheyenne is about personal relationships, not politics all the time, and so I want to continue building those personal relationships and championing Sweetwater County and Rock Springs like I've done for my whole life. So I would encourage you to vote for me, Chad Banks, on November 8th.
Thank you. We will now hear from Republican candidate JT Larson for House District 17.
Thanks so much, Deb. I'm an advocate for Southwest Wyoming, and I will do everything that I can to protect our water resources and support businesses and industry in our area. I believe in being proactive rather than reactive when it comes to protecting our Second Amendment rights. I aspire to enhance Wyoming as it pertains to our technological growth, and I want to make this state a place where all generations want to stay, live, work, and play. Education, taxes, and economic development are very important issues in the state of Wyoming. My voters need to know that I will have their backs when their values are challenged. Parents need to have the option to be involved in their children's education and policies that are put in place by the school districts. I will write and sponsor bills that will provide reasonable funding to K-12 and community colleges. During these difficult times, additional taxing should not be the answer for fiscal responsibility. When it comes to economic development, I believe in providing a gateway for businesses to grow with the least amount of government involved. Driving innovation and entrepreneurship opportunities and working with cities and communities is a great way to diversify our economy, and eliminating statutory barriers will open up the gates for businesses to grow Wyoming and keep Wyomingites here in our state. I would like to thank you all again for attending this debate. Thank you to the Rock Springs Chamber of Commerce and Western Wyoming Community College for hosting this event. I respectfully ask for your vote and would be honored to have the opportunity to serve Sweetwater County and represent you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, to Deb Sutton for moderating, and for WWC providing the opportunity for us to be here. And also to Ms. Jones for being here. Thank you. I'm Lisa Pullman. I'm running for Senate District 13, which includes part of Rock Springs and most of Green River. I am running for this position because I want to give back to my community and to my state. I'm a Wyoming native, born and bred. I attended the University of Wyoming and have taught in Sweetwater County for over 40 years. I come from a hunting family. I can skin a deer or gut a fish with the best of them. I own guns and believe that public land should stay in public hands. Our wide expanse of federal and state lands and the water that flows from our mountain streams are unique to Wyoming, and they are assets that we need to protect. I want to bring balance back to our state government. Our one-party system is not working for many people in Wyoming, and it's even caused a rift in the majority party. I want to bring different ideas to the table. In the classroom, we call this brainstorming. It's a great way to get all perspectives of a problem and come up with new and creative solutions. For many years, Wyoming has relied on the extraction industries of coal, oil, and gas to fund our state and push our economy. The boom and bust cycle has been harmful to everyone. The domination of these industries is coming to an end as demand for coal has faded and carbon emissions has become an issue. I would like to see Sweetwater County proactively go after diverse, sustainable, and value-added businesses that can give our children a career in our own state. What do I mean by value-added? Instead of transporting our raw materials out of Wyoming, we should be refining oil, producing cat litter, toothpaste, laundry soap, and baking soda like we used to do at Church and Dwight. Why don't we have meat processing plants for the cattle we produce? Where are conchkies made up now? What about local dairies? We should also provide our tourism in the state to bring manufacturers that can support our outdoor activities and also support the businesses that support tourism. One of the greatest resources is wind. We should bring in the businesses that create and maintain the wind power. Solar power is also big. We have plenty of sun and the resources to make solar panel components. In order to attract these businesses, though, we need strong schools and education programs that can help these industries thrive. The legislature has been reluctant for many years to put the money into the education system that's needed to keep it vibrant and relevant to the 21st century. I will fight for this. Another sector of the economy that needs to be healthy to persuade businesses to come here is the healthcare system. I would promote Medicaid expansion, getting 90% of the funding from the federal government's offer. This would allow 25,000 Wyoming residents to have access to healthcare they don't already have. For these reasons, I feel I would be a good fit for the legislature. I am retired, and so I have the time and energy to put into this job for the next 4 years. Please keep me in mind on November 8th.
Thank you. We will now hear from Stacy Jones.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Rock Springs Chamber for hosting this event and to Deb Sutton for moderating. My name is Stacy Jones, and I want to start by thanking everyone for their support so far in this race. I am proud to be the Republican nominee for the State Senate District 13 here in Sweetwater County after winning 67% of the vote in the primary election. I feel strongly that I won that race, and I will win this one because my only agenda is to represent the citizens of Sweetwater County. I have spent countless hours knocking on doors, on your doors, because I am listening. I am listening to your concerns, to your goals, and your ideas. What I heard was this: we need representation for public access and private property rights. We need a senator who will build relationships with leaders and stakeholders around the state. We need someone who not only supports and works to preserve our Second Amendment rights, but someone who also truly realizes the value our Second Amendment represents to Wyoming. We need someone who recognizes the importance of our extractive minerals and small businesses to our economy. We need a voice of reason and an effective conservative to represent Sweetwater County and Cheyenne. As a Wyoming native and a University of Wyoming graduate, I can accomplish these needs. I have been a resident and a registered Republican in Sweetwater County for over 25 years. My husband and I have raised our children here and are both local small business owners. I am a gun owner and a proud supporter of our Second Amendment. My family and I are outdoor enthusiasts, including hunting, fishing, boating, snowmobiling, and riding side-by-sides. Many of you know me from the boards and groups that I volunteer for, including the Rock Springs Chamber of Commerce, the URA, Wyoming Realtors, the Sweetwater One Public School Foundation, Sweetwater Snowpokes, and the Wyoming State Snowmobile Association. We raised our kids here and are running our businesses here because we truly love Sweetwater County and all it has to offer. But I feel as though our county has lost its voice. I am running to change that. Parents, students, business owners, taxpayers, if I am blessed enough to be your next senator, you will have your voice back in Cheyenne. Thank you for being here today, and I hope I can earn your vote in November.
Thank you. With that, Stacy Jones has the first question to Lisa Coolman. Lisa was quoted in the Rocket Miner newspaper, June 12, 2022. We need to wean ourselves from oil and gas. We have lots of open spaces for solar and wind energy. The opportunities are here. Can you explain how you will replace these oil-gas jobs that will be lost and the other jobs, such as teachers, that will be lost due to a decrease in our oil-gas industry?
Well, I think no one can argue that the coal industry is really fading, that we're really having troubles finding that. And we also have oil and gas. Now, I think we're going to have more oil and gas, especially with the OPEC's decision this week to lower their production by 100 million barrels a day. But we still have emissions problems, and we still can't ignore the fact that we need to diversify our economy. And like I said, I would like value-added businesses to come. I would like businesses to have refineries that will produce the oil as it's here, instead of having to spend money and then have a tax added to what we pay at the pump to send it all the way to Louisiana to be refined and then bring it back here. And so we should have the lowest. We should have lowest gas prices here because we have the raw energy that comes from here. But because we have to transport so far, we end up paying more for gas than people in Iowa or Kentucky. So we really need to have more diversification. Could you repeat the last part of that question?
You bet. Can you explain how you will replace these oil-gas jobs that will be lost and the other jobs, such as teachers, that will be lost due to a decrease in our oil and gas industry?
Well, I think if we bring in the value-added businesses, I think that will bring people, and that will keep the teachers' jobs. I also believe that we need to have, like at the community college, would be a perfect place to retrain some of those people that might be losing their jobs because of the extraction industry's wane, and that we could also then provide more education for refocusing their strengths.
Thank you. That question now goes to Stacy.
I don't believe that we need to be weaning ourselves away from the oil and gas industry. Matter of fact, I think it's time to ramp up our support for the oil and gas industry. And not only that, but coal as well. I'm willing to go to Cheyenne and fight hard for these industries that do support Sweetwater County and employ everyone here. The other forms that Lisa has mentioned, the wind and solar do not provide the jobs that we need to keep people in Sweetwater County and in the state of Wyoming.
Ms. Coolman, a 1-minute rebuttal.
Yes, I really believe that having a refinery that would refine the oil here would save the taxes, the transportation costs, and would lower the price of gas at the pumps for refined oil. I think that maybe using our empty warehouses that we have, like the one at Halliburton, by having something like the farming that they do up in Jackson, where they have vertical farming, would bring jobs in, and they may not be the jobs for the oil and gas, but they would be sustainable jobs that our children could come to and stay in Wyoming.
To Ms. Jones, a rebuttal.
I am definitely for some diversification, and some of the boards and clubs that I sit on work for this every day. The Rock Springs Chamber tries to encourage new businesses. Our URA works hard to that. The Wyoming Realtors definitely does. And Sweetwater Snowpokes, that I'm a member of, has been working to create more tourism here with the side-by-sides and collaborating with some of the other counties across the state.
Let's do a 1-minute point of order rebuttal. Go ahead, Ms. Coleman.
I came to this county 40 years ago at the end of one of their boom parts, and as soon as I came, it went bust. And I've seen how threatening that is to economies. Boom and bust cycles do not work. We've got to get out of the boom and bust cycle. That's kind of what I meant when I said we need to wean ourselves. We need to find sustainable businesses that can help our tax base grow and help our communities thrive. And the boom and bust does not work for us.
Ms. Jones.
I think in light of recent events, we can prove that the resources we have in Sweetwater County can sustain not only Wyoming, but large parts of the U.S. And I think this would decrease the boom and bust cycle that we have been experiencing for years.
Would there be no need for a second point of order? Okay, that will move us to the question from Stacy Jones. No, from Lisa Kuhlman to Stacy Jones. The question is, in the primary race, a mailer was sent out in your name that stated the feds were threatening to withhold $4 billion if Wyoming didn't allow boys to use girls' bathrooms in public schools. Do you know where the claim came from, and can you prove it is true?
That flyer came from some unknown PAC, and none of the information on it was information given by me or presented by me. As we all know, in elections, information can be sent out in your name, and I did not authorize any of the information that was on that flyer.
To you, Ms. Coleman.
Because you didn't state that you didn't come to me and say that, you didn't come to the other candidate and say that, we just assumed that that's how you felt. And so I really am glad to know that you don't agree with that. I think that that is definitely false information, and it's trying to bring a national issue into a Wyoming state. Think that we don't have those problems, and I'm glad to know that you are saying you don't believe in that. Thank you.
Ms. Jones, a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. Yes, I think there is 2 ways you could go about it. I didn't want to draw more attention to the flyers as they were negative, and as you know, I've not run a negative campaign. I have not run that so far, and I'm not going to start now.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Again, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Stacy, for clarifying.
Okay, with that said, I think we're going to move on to The questions that came in from Chamber of Commerce members. We have a couple of them. I want to start with the education question. I have two of them. First, education in the state is a great concern. What proposals do you intend to make to address reduction to education while balancing the state budget? This one then goes to Lisa. Okay.
Well, first of all, I am endorsed by the Wyoming Education Association, and I am fighting to get fully funded for education. A few years ago, the legislature actually spent money to get an expert in to find out what they need to do, and the expert said they needed to give education in Wyoming $70 million to fully fund it and bring it up to standards. And the legislature said, oh, we can't do that. And so they barely funded it all. This last legislature was $10 million, and we had to fight hard for that. I really think we do have the money to educate, to put that $70 million in, and I think we need to use those education funds that are now in our rainy day fund that they've been stockpiling for years and years and years. And I think the money is there. We need to fund education.
Stacy?
As a mom of two Sweetwater County graduates, education is very dear to my heart. I realize that it is important to most people. I think the support needs to go to the teachers and the students, and we need to find different ways. I know the idea has been thrown out about consolidating the districts. I think Fremont County has maybe 7 school districts. We have 2. I think that's a great way that we could make our dollars go further.
Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Kuhlman.
Well, I think that it's good to consolidate when we can. I agree. There is a reason, I guess, that they haven't done this. It's come up on many legislatures over the years, and it's never been worked upon. And I don't know if it's because of the lobbyists from the School Boards Association or some other things that might be against it, that it's never been brought to fruition. So yes, if it came up for a bill to consolidate school districts, I would consider that as well. But I really believe we have the money. We just need to put the money where the mouth is. And another thing too is we need to respect the teachers. For years we've been maligned, we've been called names, we've been told that we don't know what we're doing, that we are just babysitters, and I really am offended by that. I really think that we need to respect the teachers and let them allow them to do their job.
To you, Ms. Jones.
I agree with Lisa. It's very important to let the teachers know how important they are to us. My kids have had some tremendous teachers over the years here in Sweetwater County, and we need to find a way to make sure all of the dollars are going to the teachers and the students. Having that money stay in the classroom and educating our students has to be paramount.
Thank you. 1 minute back. Okay. Final question. And this really does, in some ways, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think it does have statewide implications if you think about the question. So this one now goes to Stacey Jones. Do you support or oppose the specific purpose tax, and why?
Well, I am definitely not tremendously in favor of taxes. I am a Republican, and I believe that the tax burden that we place on our constituents is at an all-time high right now. Although I do believe specific purpose taxes can be super beneficial in funding items that have not been able to be funded until now. I know there's quite a few items that are on our specific purpose tax agenda right now, and they would be a boon to any Sweetwater County resident.
Thank you. And to you, Ms. Coleman.
While I do agree that we have the money in the coffers, the legislature is very reluctant to give them up, and that's why I believe that we need to support the special purpose tax.
Thank you. And back to you, Stacey, for any rebuttal? Lisa? I think that's it. Do we want to take questions from, oh, closing arguments. I always forget something, honestly, and I don't know why that is. We will start with closing arguments to Lisa Coleman, a Democrat running for House District 13.
Thank you very much, Deb. This afternoon, we have discussed our views on economy, education, and taxes. As I have stated, I'm a proponent for diverse, sustainable, and value-added businesses coming to Sweetwater County. As a WA-endorsed candidate, I will fight for strong public education, from kindergarten through the University of Wyoming. I will also fight to return the $100 million that the last legislature cut from the healthcare department to every town, so every town in Wyoming can have access to quality healthcare. I believe we have an obligation to help those who are less fortunate than ourselves. We have the money to pay our public employees what they are worth. We have the money to fund our education system. We need to stop stashing away money for the future and start using it to help the people of Wyoming now. Failing to do this is not fiscally conservative, it's fiscally ignorant. Finally, I would like to address the elephant in the room. I am a Democrat. This last session, there were only 2 Democrats in the Senate. How am I going to get anything done with such an uphill climb? I would like to believe that the people of Wyoming are not just sheep who vote for someone simply because they are a certain party. I think our cowboy spirit instills in us the insight to look at the person and what that person stands for. I am willing to work across the aisle to get the things done that I am passionate about. Together, we can accomplish great things. It takes time to make connections and build relationships, but I know I can do that with integrity and hard work. As Wyomingites, we have many more things in common than one might think at first glance. Notice that we've agreed on a lot of things today. We value our land and our personal freedoms. I will work to make sure that we are not stripped of either. There are many issues today at the national level that are trying to be pushed on us. We don't need fixes for things that aren't a part of our culture. We need to focus on Wyoming issues and not muddy the waters with debate on a national agenda, especially in the state legislature. I am Lisa Coleman, and I'm running for Wyoming State Senate District 13. I would appreciate your vote. Early voting is open now.
Stacey Jones, final thoughts.
I would like to thank Lisa for her time here today, and I also want to thank again the Rock Springs Chamber and also Western Wyoming Community College and Deb Sutton for their dedication to this event. I'm proud to be the Republican nominee for State Senate District 13 here in Sweetwater County. I love Sweetwater County and cherish the connections I have built and will rely on after I am elected. I will stand up for my constituents and the ideals that this county thrives on. I will stand up for public access and private property rights. As a conservative Republican, I will work to preserve your Second Amendment rights and stand up against red flag laws. I will support the industries, businesses, and individuals in our county while working hard to preserve a state for our future generations. I will be a strong conservative voice in Sweetwater County and Cheyenne. Parents, students, business owners, taxpayers, if I am blessed enough to be your next senator, I will be your voice in Cheyenne. Thank you for being here today, and I hope I can earn your vote in November.
Thank you.